James Houston IV decided bulletin board material was needed for this Cotton Bowl, and I am here for it. And all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kid folk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time today. I want to talk about University of Florida linebacker James Houston IV, a junior, who got on the Zooms for the Cotton Bowl press conference earlier today and gave us this bit of gold in a quote about the matchup between the number 7 Florida Gators and the number 6 Oklahoma Sooners in the Cotton Bowl. Oklahoma is a good matchup, but they're not on our level. They're not SEC. They're not the Florida Gators. That is James Houston IV talking about Oklahoma and what he really thinks was really good about the Sooners. Now, this game for me still is in some measure of doubt because Dan Mullen said in the post-game press conference following the loss to Alabama 52-46 that might be the last game that they played this season, and you could take that in any direction that you want to take it if you were media. Then, upon finding out that his team had been selected for the Cotton Bowl, he said, that's very cool. The thing is, I'm going to let my kids go home for Christmas. They've had 8 straight weeks of SEC football, and I hope they want to come back and give us a ball game, get that competitive edge going against Oklahoma on December 30th. But you know what? We'll see. Because this is in keeping with a long-thought theory among folks inside and outside the SEC, which is to say, anytime a top 10 SEC team is left out of the college football playoff, they revert to 2 schools of thought. One is whatever New Year's Six Bowl they earn selection into is a game that they no longer wanted to be a part of in the first place, but since we're here, we'll play. And then if they get beat, we didn't want to be here in the first place. Georgia decided that it still wanted to go after Baylor, even as Baylor was a worse team than Georgia was in the Sugar Bowl last year. And then the year before that, Georgia lost to Texas without the likes of DeAndre Baker and others, and said, you know what, we didn't really want to be there. In 2013, Oklahoma beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, and then you had Nick Saban in the post-game press conference going, it was really hard to get my kids energized, fired up for this game because, we thought we should have been playing in the national championship. This is in keeping with what we know the SEC thinks of itself. Not just that it is the best league in college football, but that no other team outside of the SEC holds a candle to SEC competition because there's no way that Oklahoma could be as good as Vanderbilt, as good as Kentucky, as good as Mississippi State, as good as Arkansas. Much as I love Arkansas, you understand, But what I find to be wild is every year there are about 4 teams in the SEC that we expect to finish inside the top 15. And this year, you get Alabama, Texas A&M, Florida, and Georgia, right, inside your top 10. I believe that all of those teams are good. I also think that Oklahoma could beat all of those teams. It's not just that these games would be competitive. They're the kind of games that bowl season was originally invented for. This matchup between Florida and Oklahoma is as close to a pure bowl game as we've seen all year, or will see all year, where you get to see what perhaps the best or one of the best of the Big 12 looks like against one of the best of the SEC. And then James Houston coming out here talking like this. Just my favorite. Because y'all know on this here show, there's nothing I like more about college football than talking your trash, right? And then we have years of talking your trash. But in this game, without Kyle Pitts, and I don't think you're going to have Kadarius Toney for this because he's a senior and eligible for the NFL draft, and why would he risk it all in this game, especially if Kyle Pitts has already said, I'm not going to play in it. You might get to see Keon Zipperer. And I really love Keon Zipperer. I think that dude's going to be an outstanding tight end prospect and presents a really great challenge for Oklahoma and its nickel slot guys like Brendan Radley-House, Trey Norwood, Jeremiah Cradell, and the like. I also think that Florida's wide receiving core is elite and is going to present a really great challenge for Oklahoma's defensive backs. Trey Brown already entering the NFL draft. It said, you know what, Nomas, right, who had one hell of a career. Shout out to the Tulsa boy because Tulsa boys absolutely smack. and he knows that. Now, the other thing I think is interesting is whether or not Kyle Trask goes through with playing in this game, because if Kyle Trask goes through with playing in this game, it's a different ball game altogether. And as far as a pick 'em as to who you think is going to be good or you think is going to get beat down, because I think Emory Jones is good, but he is a totally different player than Kyle Trask, and you're going to run a totally different offense than you might normally see. That said, it ain't that big a deal because Emory Jones was once committed to Ohio State and then ends up decommitting so that he could go to Florida late in the process. And then when you're looking at the spread for this, like, you could come to find out that Oklahoma ends up getting one over on this Florida team as a 2-loss champion, and people saying that's what should have happened. But the way that Florida played against Alabama leads you to believe that it is, if not the second or third most explosive offense in the country, that it's the number one explosive offense in the country outside of Alabama, right? Oklahoma is also up there because this is a Lincoln Riley coach football team with an absolute stud at quarterback and studs at all the receiver positions. And that's what else I'm really interested to see is how does this Oklahoma team match up against that defense? Because Alabama put up 52, and there are 4 Heisman Trophy candidates on that Alabama roster. 3 we know of that played in the SEC championship game and are going to play against Notre Dame, and then if they beat Notre Dame, and I think they will, for a national championship. Can Oklahoma put up the same number of points as Alabama on Florida as Alabama did? Like, it's a really interesting prospect, especially as I have been bullish for over a year now and going to start getting louder about it, that this Oklahoma team is built for 2021. What a way to announce yourself to the college football world going into 2021 with a decisive win against Florida, no matter how beaten down they might be, right? This is already what's leaking out of the Peach Bowl for Cincinnati and Georgia. They already lost 8 dudes to either early entry or just saying, we're not going to play in this bowl game. I'm going to go straight to NFL draft prep. And now we got folks talking about if Cincy wins that game, that they're beating a down Georgia team. Georgia still got like a 9-point edge, according to the books in Vegas, against Cincinnati, even losing all these players because it's been like that for them and they recruit at that level. But what a win it would be for Cincinnati as well to go get a Peach Bowl and an undefeated season. Who's going to tell them that they're not a national champ? This is also going to have a lot to do with how we view Oklahoma going against SEC teams. Should it make the college football playoff next year? Because the last time Oklahoma played an SEC team, it got destroyed by an LSU team that is a dumpster fire. All right, some tip-ins before we get out of here. Larry Fedora, Jorge Munoz, those guys are gone from Baylor. They're going to revamp the offense over there. We'll see how that goes. Hugh Freeze is in contact with Auburn after we find out that Brent Venables didn't want the job and Bill Clark at UAB didn't want the job. And it feels like Brian Harsin is going to end up getting the job over at Boise State. I think that's a really good hire for Auburn. I just hope that they give him some time because he was great at Arkansas State. He was great at Boise State. He was great as a coordinator at Texas. I think they could be really good with Brian Harsin, giving him some opportunities down there. But as we see some moving and shaking going on, the other question I have is, where does Art Briles end up in all of this? Because I don't believe that he just resigned Mount Vernon for no reason. Now that Sonny Cumbie is in at Texas Tech as offensive coordinator, I doubt that Dave Aranda wants to bring Art Briles in to be his offensive coordinator at Baylor, because we all know that Art Briles is looking to be a head coach in college football sooner rather than later. But where? Right? We'll see. All right, that's it for me. Deuces.